Welcome to this end of the season Hoops and Dreams QPR podcast. My name is Brian Fisher, and along with two rather special guests, I will be reviewing the season and asking where we go from here. Also, just to let you know, we have 2 episodes that we'll be releasing over the next couple of weeks, 2 further episodes. And in those, we'll be ranking the performances of our squad members. Anyway, on to our 2 special guests. Guest number 1 is the modern day founder of the Hoops and Dreams Forum, who also happens to host the preview podcast that we put out, James Miller. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Brian.
And last but certainly not least is guest number 2, Dave Barton, who sometimes manages to shoehorn in work commitments whilst editing our podcasts. Welcome to you both. Hi, Veda.
Sure, cheers. Thank you.
Okay, before we go on to a quick review of the last 3 games, and it will be quick, it'll be painful. Can I offer my congratulations to Celtic for beating Rangers? Now, the results. Burnley against QPR, we won 2-1 away. Stoke against QPR, we won 1-0. QPR against Bristol City, the easy one you'd expect, we lost 2-0. So we got 6 points out of a possible 9. Our final league position for the season is 20th on 50 points, and we're sitting below Rotherham on a poorer goal difference, which must rankle with somebody on this podcast tonight. Burnley looked a lost cause. In fact, the Hoops and Dreams Forum's prediction competition, which you really should get into, had nobody predicting a win, but a win we did get. It was a superb performance, with Dickey making 2 crucial goal line clearances and goals from Sam Field and Chris Martin proving the deciding factors. Stoke looked less of a challenge, so a win was not as unexpected, but the match was a nervy one for the R's, and it had a couple of goalmouth clearances as well for us. Dyke's long-range strike was parried by their goalie, only for Albert Adoma to knock it smoothly in for the only goal of the game. Finally, the Bristol City game yesterday. This was everything the other 2 performances were not. Lacklustre. A packed Loftus Road saw Bristol City there for the taking, but the only takers were those who were saying, "I told you so." A damp squib ending to a dire season, I think, from me. So let's quickly review those championship games, lads. Dave, did the shock win against Burnley and the rollover against Bristol City rather typify our season?
Yeah, I think it sums up quite well, doesn't it? I mean, Burnley come out of absolutely nowhere, fully expected us to get hammered up there, and they were superb. Put bodies on the line. They were brave. They were really good. And then you go to Bristol City, and it was the opposite. It was as soon as we faced a bit of adversity again, game over, to be honest. We started okay in both halves, but as soon as Bristol City scored, you might as well have gone home. It was very disappointing, and it was probably a good way to end the season, really, wasn't it? Because it's kind of what it's been like all season. It was very poor.
James, what can we expect or extract from those squads' performances in those last 3 games? Can we extract any hope for the future?
I don't know what hope we can extract in the future, but I'd say we can definitely realise now that we were very lucky. I mean, as the time's gone on since Burnley, especially, I've realised how lucky we were to win that match. It was pure and simple. We should have been 3 or 4 behind, and I think it was only because we had Armstrong as the option off the bench. And don't forget, he's been missing for all the other matches recently. If he doesn't come on in that game, I don't think we get anything from it. He scared Burnley. They weren't expecting him. He stretched them, going behind them. Without that, we lose. You could argue against Stoke. If Aldoma's shot hits the post and comes back out, and Reading don't have their points deduction, we'd be down. So we've been lucky. We've been poor. We've somehow squeaked ourselves over the line. And the Bristol City performance, to me, I know it was a dead rubber, but it's really got my back up how poor we were. It really has. I don't know how you guys feel, but it was his chance. We said it in the preview show last week. It was his chance to get rid of some of the doubters, try something different, blood some youngsters, give us some. Talking there about what hope have we got for the future. He needed to give us that hope, and it was just like Preston, Coventry, Birmingham. And if anything, it's now actually raised for me more doubts than I've ever had before. I mean, we didn't even have a shot on target.
No, it's true. And in fact, I felt, with being there, you had an opportunity there to finish on a high at home. And what actually happened was we had a lackluster display from a lot of the team who were the loanees. they seemed to be as if they were frightened to get injured on the last day of the season. It was almost like that feel about it. They did not want to commit themselves. And we showed no signs whatsoever of scoring. It was dire.
Yeah.
4-4-2.
We needed to get the monkey off our back with a home win. I feel that's going to hang over to next season now. It's one home win in 15 games going back to like October. By the time the season starts in August, you're almost going to get to that point where people are going to be quoting the stat of, oh, we've only got one home win in a year. And if they could have just got rid of that yesterday, it was gone. You can start next season afresh. And I feel like he's now created a hangover and the negativity is back straight away. Myself included, everyone feels so much worse than what we did after Stoke. It was such an error and a missed opportunity to do that against Bristol City.
Can't argue with that. Okay, there are no matches to predict, so our end of the season wrap up continues with topics. After a real roller coaster of a season, we finally ended up, as I said, in 20th place with 50 points. So after being top in October and hovering above the relegation zone in April, you can say that we lived to fight another day. But is this only what QPR deserved, or is it what was thrust upon them with Beale running away, the inability of Critchley to solve those problems that he inherited, and the lateness of Ainsworth's arrival? Do you think that was the case, James?
Such a difficult question, isn't it? Why did the season fall apart? If we had that answer to that, I think we'd be in the job ourselves. I think everyone points to Beale leaving, and I believe we'd have finished higher if he'd stayed. But I think our main problem, and it's kind of like a hangover from the previous season, is our players are just so weak mentally. Like Dave just alluded to it there. Bristol, we start half well, and as soon as we concede, game over. Second half, come out a bit better, they score, game over again. And it's that we have no confidence. As soon as the confidence is gone in our players, they become a shadow of themselves. They go from £10 million players to someone you wouldn't even be able to pay off. And it's just so strange. And I think that is what is the major thing for this summer is that shift. And maybe we have to change almost the whole squad to restart and get rid of that, because that to me is the main issue. Yes, Beale left, but we were already starting to struggle before that. And it's because the confidence had gone. As soon as we lose a few in a row, it just starts to snowball. I don't know what Dave thinks, but I don't know. It's the mentality of the players is such a big thing.
Dave, do you think it was a tale of three managers or something else?
I mean, Beale going shouldn't have had the effect it did. I mean, he was doing pretty well, but he was always going to have a dip at some point. They shouldn't have switched off as much as they did after he left. It felt like they got the managerial appointments wrong. Critchley he seemed a good fit on paper, but it just didn't work, did it? And I think it just snowballed from there. We went on a bit of a bad run under him, changed it again to try and get the boost. That didn't work. You seem to think we're going to turn it around against Watford. And then there was that Blackpool a couple of days later, and you think, oh my God. I think there's just so many things wrong. It felt to me that after Beale went, that the whole club seemed to think, all right, we'll just get to the end of the season. We're not going to go up now, and we just see how it goes. And there was too long of the season left to just kind of switch off, and it felt like they switched off quite early. And then all of a sudden, you was in April, and it was like, oh, hang on, we might actually get relegated here. And it took a hell of a result of Burnley to keep us up in the end, didn't it? I think there's just so much wrong there at the minute. It's hard to know where to start.
You've not mentioned, in fact, I don't think even James mentioned it, the fact that we had multiple key long-term injuries that decimated the squad. And the subsequent defeats that came after that, I think they impacted upon the confidence probably more than Beale leaving, if truth be known. Do you agree, Dave?
Yeah, we did have quite a few again, same as the year before. There seemed to be a lot of like niggly ones where players, you wouldn't really know what was wrong with them. I remember when the World Cup break happened, they said Johansson was going to be out for a couple of days, and he didn't resurface till about March, did he? It was like, what happened there? And same with Clark Salter and a few others. It's hard to get any sort of rhythm going when you've got them sort of injuries. But we kind of only really have ourselves to blame for that. We've signed a lot of players that are injury prone, and shock horror, they all got injured. So, you kind of have to live with it.
James, do you agree?
Yeah, the injuries is a major issue. And I like Dave just said, though, the problem is the club sign these players knowing they're injury prone. I was looking today in Clark Salter when he signed, there's quotes on our forum from Coventry fans telling us he's a good defender, but he's injury prone. And what is he? He's been in and out of the team all season.
Paladin.
And yeah, do you know what though? I think the club have actually not helped themselves in creating like this toxic atmosphere around the club because of the fact they don't tell us why players are injured. They need to have a long, hard think about why they do that, because especially for the loan players, people have been slagging off the players just because they kind of don't know why they're out. So then when they go missing for 4 months, it's easy to criticise them. Whereas if the club just said he's done his calf or done this and he's out for 3 months, none of that would happen. And that doesn't help the whole vibe around the club because people are against the players and criticise them and so on. We all do it. But it's because we don't know the information. They need to stop that as well as helping to prevent the injuries in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of the times we're talking about smoky mirrors designed to confuse the opponents who are coming up on Saturday. But you're absolutely right. I think that they could be a lot more honest about the long-term injuries. Definitely. We mentioned earlier on that we're going to be ranking the players in the next 2 podcasts. So perhaps if you all want to get there in advance and get your own list organised. The first one, if memory serves me correctly, goes from A through to D. I think might go through to Field, actually, I think. And then the second lot go right the way through to Z. Luckily, we haven't got any Zs. Putting what's really been a miserable season behind us, let's please do that. Let's have a look at how the club's directors will review the situation as they get round the boardroom shortly, I would think, and how they're going to improve next season. I'm going to ask you both, given that our directors are reportedly shelling out millions a month to keep us afloat, will they be philosophical about our fall from grace, or will they be assertively looking for answers and possibly heads? Dave?
I hope the latter. Probably is the former. They need to have a big review of what's going on there. It's been poor. This isn't a one-off thing. We had this last year. We fell from a good position in around February, March, and just collapsed out of it. Similar problems with injuries, that sort of thing, has happened again this year. They need to review the whole thing. For me, I've always liked what Les Ferdinand was trying to do in his role and trying to develop players and bring them through. But it's pretty damning when you see that Young Player of the Year list that they had yesterday for the Young Player of the Year award. It's like some of them haven't even played this season, and the winner didn't even score a goal. It's like, it's clearly not working, and I think there has to be change there. Whether they'll do it or not, whether they'll think they've got away with it and we'll just carry on and hope next season's better, I don't know. But I think they certainly need to do something because next season could be a lot worse.
James, if you were one of the directors sitting around that board table now, would you be a happy bunny?
If I was one of the directors sitting around the table, I think I'd be expecting myself to be out of a job. To be honest, heads need to roll, and you only have to look at just a few of the decisions that have been made with regard to the managers they've appointed. Potentially not good enough. Critchley, Ainsworth as well is going to be in for some stick already. And then like the decision Barbet to leave, who was in charge of that decision, to then replace him only a couple of months later with Leon Balogun coming in, who's way older than him. And that's just a few of the decisions that all the loan players, they say they're not going to bring in loan players, then they do. They basically sell us the fact that the club, we have to develop players and sell them on. And now it looks like we're going to go down the route of letting another manager bring in his own players who potentially won't have any sell-on value if he wants experienced players and so on. Just nothing is marrying up. It's like everything they've said over the last couple of years just seems to have gone out of the window, or they've lost sight of what they're trying to do. And it's created a mess. We are in an absolute mess. And I actually feel I said it about the players, we need to basically get rid of every player we can get rid of to try and shift the mentality of the squad and bring in a whole new squad. Kind of like when Warburton first came in 2019, I think it was 16 in, 16 out. It needs to be like that on the field. I feel like it needs to be like that off the field for the club, like a hard reset. They need fresh input, fresh ideas. You see how many coaches we have? I know Loft for Words always points this out. We have like international coaches who are just like bit part coaches for us. What are they all bringing to the table? We need a massive reset, across every level of the club.
It's going to have to be a pretty brave person, though, who does this, I think. I get the impression at the moment bravery is not that strong a card at QPR. I guess the next question, therefore, must be Ainsworth came in late and he's overseen an improvement in fortunes of sorts. So is he the one to carry us forward and upwards next season in the Championship? And it must be upwards, for God's sake. If so, can he do it with a limited budget that he's obviously going to have? James?
It's got to be careful what we say about Ainsworth. I feel like I've noticed a few comments out there, like if you say anything negative about him now, there's a few people ready to like jump on you. But the Bristol City match has just changed my opinion so much on, I just don't feel, I like him, but I don't feel he's the right manager for us going forward. He didn't feel the right fit when he joined. We all said it on the podcast when he joined. And I feel like he feels like even less of the right fit now because of what I was just talking about before. Everything the club's meant to be doing, he kind of goes against it in terms of the style of football, developing youth players. And I feel like we were saying that you said about people needing to make brave decisions. When we won the playoff final, it felt to me like they should have got rid of Harry Redknapp, and they didn't. It was the wrong choice. Someone needed to be bold and say, yes, you've got us up, but you are so past it, you're the wrong manager. Then the next season, they had Chris Ramsey in charge. He won one match in the remaining games he had in charge from February. That was our chance when we were going down to come back up. But they left him in charge, and it was clear he was out of his depth. They needed to be bold, brave, and say, look, I know it's harsh, but you're not the right manager right now. And I feel like this is one of those moments, and nobody hopes I'm wrong more than me. I want QPR to be successful. I don't really like calling for a manager to go, but from what I've seen over his 13 games, the wins we've had, touch and go. The style of football, I know people touch on it all the time, but it's literally horrible to watch. It really is. And the club need fans in the door, and you wonder how long they're going to keep going next season. For me, I think he's just lost my faith in him. I don't believe he's the right manager for QPR, for what the fans want, and to take us forward. I don't. I actually feel should have kept him if we'd gone down. But now that we've stayed up, we have to be bold and say, look, thank you for keeping us up. I know it's harsh, but we're going to go a different way.
Okay, Dave, can I ask you the same question? Should Ainsworth be the one who carries us forward, or should there be somebody in the boardroom called Brutus?
I completely agree with James, to be honest. I think I haven't it's the style of play I haven't liked, but I don't think it's a style of play that's going to win you points. I think if you continue playing this way, it's not going to win us enough games. And the 3 games he has won, I mean, we've had to spend 90% of the game pretending to be injured to win the games, try and waste time. It's difficult because part of the problem is that we've just spoken about, like potentially Les Ferdinand going. There's a lot of change going to go on at the club this summer. If you did get rid of Ainsworth now, who's actually appointing another replacement? Is it going to be the same people again? Do we trust that they're going to get it right this time? We've got it wrong the last couple of times. It's a really difficult situation. I think he will stay, but James is right. There's a very strong argument to get rid of him at the moment because, I mean, I think it's a certainty he'll be gone by Christmas, to be honest. I just can't see, how it's going to work with him. But, my only hope is I listened I listened to some interviews with him recently, and he does talk a good game.
Yeah.
And I was feeling quite positive going to the Bristol City game, and then you watch what was actually produced, and you think, well, that's not what you're talking about. None of these young players are playing. He picked loan players in the Bristol City game. And you think, well, what are you learning from them? They're not going to be here next year. Yeah, I think the whole thing is a real mess. It's a very difficult situation.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down to the level of the players, but I mean, what was interesting at Bristol for the Bristol City game was that they played 4-4-2, and there were so many long balls pushed forward, and nobody was getting the second ball. Nobody. So there was this huge gap between Martin and Dykes up front and the midfield. They just weren't picking anything up. And if we're going to play that sort of football, I suspect we've got, square pegs in round holes. That's what it looks like to me. So he's going to have to completely change all that. Is he going to do that? Is he going to play 4-4-2, keep Chris Martin perhaps and Dykes and change the midfield? It's crazy.
Do you know what? One of my main reasons I don't. By the way, I don't expect them to get rid of him. I expect him to fully be in charge of the club next season. But one of my main concerns is I feel like he's going to harm us in the transfer market. Like I mentioned before, we're meant to be bringing in players to develop, sell on for more. It doesn't sound like he's going to bring in that type of player. But also, who will want to join us with Gareth Ainsworth as the manager? You only have to look on the EFL highlights or any coverage we get, and they point out his style of play and even they were saying is he the right fit for QPR. There's so much negative around us, and players who could potentially be wanting to join us, they'll be thinking the same thing. They'll have seen the hacker video. They'll have seen that we only had 20% possession. They'll have seen the season that we had, and they're just going to think QPR are in free fall. How are we going to attract players to actually take us forward? Anyway, but with Gareth Ainsworth in charge, I feel it harms us even more because he's got this stigma attached to him in the media, even, and obviously with fans, probably other players out there know it themselves. We're not going to be attracting your Chris Willock types from a few years ago, and I don't know. That's the danger as well. That is the real danger. And then you let him bring in experienced heads. We're then stuck with them if we decide that we want to change him a few months into the season. It's such a dangerous road to go down.
For what it's worth, I think Ainsworth will stay purely because we've had 3 managers already this season, and I don't think they're ready to change again. That's the only reason at this stage. I think that's the case. And it does come down to results, as I was saying. If he gets good results before Christmas, he'll be on for the rest of the season. If he doesn't, he'll be gone. That's just the way it is. It's a cruel world in football, I'm afraid. Quick one. Let's address the elephant in the room. Sir Les, do we see a future for a director of football at the club, and would it be Sir Les?
I think we need a director of football at the club. I think part of the reason we've got one is because the owners didn't want to run the club day to day, and when they did run it day to day and had a big say and everything, it was an absolute disaster, which is why we're in this mess. So I think we do need one because they're on the other side of the world. They don't want to do it. But I think the time's come to change that. I mean, change who that is. I think Les has been here 8 years. Feels like the right time to go. We've just about stayed up, trying to get some fresh ideas in, kind of a new outlook. Part of the problem we've had in recent years with his idea with developing players and selling on is the transfer market for championship clubs has died with COVID. They're not these players that you could sell for 4 or 5 million a few years ago have gone. They're either you're getting 15, 20 million for someone who's a superstar like we did with Eze, or nothing. There's no in between now. So that's kind of broken what we had. So yeah, I think it probably is time to go and to change it around now.
Okay. James, I'm saying?
Yeah, I think exactly what Dave said. And again, we need some fresh ideas in the club, so I would change him. But how are they going to let Gareth Ainsworth now call the shots? That's what it feels like to me. So then, do you even need to replace him if Les Ferdinand just goes? Because we alluded to it on the preview show last week in terms of they've had interviews in the club saying we plan X amount of transfer windows in front, or if Chris Willock leaves, we have these targets and so on. Yeah, it feels with Gareth Ainsworth, you're going to need a central midfielder who is happy to touch the ball 5 times in a match and just run around. And that wouldn't be on our target list from the last few years. We would never have tried to sign just a workman-like player or whatever. So it goes against everything that he's been doing. So then he should go. But do you even need to replace him if you're going to let the manager call the shots? Which, to be honest, it feels like we do that anyway. We let Beale do it. So I don't know. I feel we should have a director of football, but it needs to be someone who is more powerful and more, I don't know what the word powerful, but more strict and says, no, you're the manager. This is the player we're having, and so on. I feel like Les Ferdinand has been too weak, too persuaded by the managers, and that's why he should be changed.
I'd love to say, after all the questions that have been raised during all the forums that have been held, I still don't really understand the dynamics between the director of football, the manager, and Lee Hoos. But we won't go into that anymore. Let's move on now quickly to player of the season. It has to be Sam Field, surely. Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a short list of one, isn't it, really? It's just,
Yeah.
I'll go along with you there. He's been the best one, really. He's not had a great season by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been the most consistent player for us. I don't know where we'd be without him. Hopefully he stays this summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that James said on the Hoops and Dreams forum that only 2 players have played every minute. That's Dieng and Field. And Field, for me, has made less mistakes and has been really, really good. I've been delighted with his contribution through thick and thin. He's done fantastic. He really has. So, okay, that was an easy one. Goal of the season. Not a lot to choose from, sadly. But I noticed on the Hoops and Dreams forum that votes were split across the offerings. Dave?
I'd go Willock against Middlesbrough, the early. I mean, when they showed the goals on the official website the other week, that was on the short list. It was hard to believe that was the same player that's currently in the team, Willock. But I'd go with that one. That was probably the pick of them. Really good solo goal.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's the one I went for as well, because he dribbled past 2 players from right half across the pitch, wasn't it? Under a lot of pressure and put in a blistering shot to score. For me, that was the one. But do you agree, James?
No, do you know, it was my first initial thought, but then it was Ghost Tony on the forum. He pointed out that his favourite one. I actually then agreed with him after watching it back a few times, and it was Willock's one away at Watford. And it's not the finish; it's the speed of the football, the accuracy of the passing, the movement of the players, the overlapping fullbacks. It's a fantastic team goal, and looking back, it showed what this team was capable of. And it's actually quite a sad goal, because you think it's a travesty where we ended up when we could play like that. And that's why it was my favourite goal of the season, because it was such a good goal for the whole team, the players. Like I say, what a shame.
Let's hope they show all of those goals right at the beginning of the season, next season. Okay. Best moment of the season then, James?
I actually ended up, I was between Dieng's header at Sunderland, which was unforgettable, but I ended up going for Martin's header against Burnley to get that win, because, like we've discussed, it was that moment that saved our season. Without that header going in, I know there's Reading's point deduction, but that moment was when I think we all then thought, oh, we might actually survive this. Whereas up until then, even when it was 1-1, it was going to be touch and go, wasn't it? And so it was definitely the moment of the season. It was pandemonium when that went in.
Yeah, Dave, what about you?
I went with Dieng's goal at Sunderland, mainly because I was there that day and it was an unbelievable moment. I couldn't, we come from 2 down with about a couple of minutes left, and we thought it was going to be an amazing season that day when Dieng scored that goal, and we was all going to just get better and better. It obviously didn't turn out that way, but yeah, that was a great moment. But I think James was probably right, to be fair. The Chris Martin one was special, wasn't it?
Well, I felt I could go for Albert's goal against Stoke, because that led to victory and thus non-relegation. But I also am going with Semi Dieng's goal against Sunderland, because somehow it typified how weird a season we've had. Okay. Worst moments.
He scored more goals than most of our midfielders.
Yes, he was top scorer for a while alongside Dykes. Yeah. Right. Worst moment of the season, James.
Oh, how long have you got? The instinctive one to go for was Blackpool 6-1, but I actually went for the Wigan 1-0, because it was that match where there was like the arguing with the players at the end, and it felt like, whoa, everyone left that ground thinking we're gone, we are going down, and the whole atmosphere around the club was so bad at that point. I know Blackpool had come before that, and like I say, it was the feeling leaving the ground that day where we were all just so quiet and just thinking we're going to League One, and so it was just a real gloomy moment. And like I say, the toxic atmosphere with Balogun coming over and stuff, it was a real low.
Yeah, Dave, I'm going to ask you the same question then.
Yeah,
Worst
I mean,
moment?
there's been plenty in there. I went with the Blackpool one, mainly because it was just after Watford. We'd had such a good win that day. Everyone was positive and thought, here we go, we're going to get out of it. Ainsworth's going to work. It's going to be great. And then they did that. I mean, I think we were 4 down in about 20 minutes. It was one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a team, let alone from QPR. It was diabolical. And that set the tone from then. It was all downhill from then onwards. So, but you could pick about 20 worst moments, to be honest. It's been a diabolical season.
Yeah, you're right.
Worst moment of the season is just October onwards.
Yeah.
Okay, I went for finding out that Neil Critchley, with all his experience and ability, could not turn around the juggernaut heading towards relegation. Okay, it finally did turn out okay in the end. But why can't QPR for once do things the easy way? So anyway, I went for Neil Critchley. Okay, so we've come to the end of our first end of the season podcast. Our time is up. Many thanks to my guests, James and Dave, and to you all for watching. This was a Hoops and Dreams QPR podcast. Come on, you R's!
We know who we are. You know who we are. We are QPR.